we allow the nightly news and the newspapers and our institutions and our educational systems to corral us into thinking certain ways with religion and everything else that kind of tints our vision of what's really going on around here. So, you know, my mural, I guess, is a beacon for those who are looking for a way out. They're looking for an alternative way of interpreting reality.
Right. I mean, that's profoundly on point, because you were talking about the symbolism. It's been seen in secret societies for hundreds, thousands of years, really, going back to the old Egypt systems. And there's kind of one meaning on the surface for the public who are under this limited paradigm, a controlled perception. And then these same symbols have deep, inclusive meaning for the people who run the societies that run the world.
Yeah, yeah.
But then you've
totally.
got...
I mean, that's...
But then street art today is, in a way, hijacking that and kind of rebranding some of the same imagery. It's very interesting.
Yeah, some of us are, you know. It's a hard battle out here. I mean, I stand alone quite often. There's only a handful of us that really dig deep into the symbolism and into the intentional purpose of this type of thinking. You know, this type of thinking generally isn't just to have lightly over a cup of coffee or something and go about your day. This type of thinking is transformative. It's meant to basically change your perception on life and give you a backbone, give you some hope, give you something better to believe in than lies, you know?
Exactly. Well, you know, hip-hop culture in general and street art has gotten, you know, the term street cred lends itself to those kind of artistry, the idea that it comes from the people, but at the same time, through the record companies and the controlled corporate media, we see a hijacking of all that and kind of a narrowing of those messages. I mean, can you talk about the impact of that kind of art over the past several decades and why it appeals so much to the general population and ways that it's been controlled?
Yeah, well, I mean, just for me in general, as a teenager, it was appealing to me because it put me in the driver's seat in life. I wasn't sitting on the back of a ride any longer, being taken around and chauffeured around by reality. I was making the decisions to go out and vandalize public space because public space was dissatisfactory to me. You know, I'm a taxpayer, I'm a citizen, I'm a human being. I belong to this place just as much as everyone else does, but I have no access to anything. I'm shut off. I am basically just a number that pays revenue continuously. And graffiti art was complete liberation to that concept. It basically said, you know, this is your world. What do you want to make out of it? You can make anything out of this place. And so I think that that's the main thing of these alternative subcultures that continually develop in our society is this desire and this need to break out of this conformity, this box that, you know, that they really want to put you in, because you're much more manageable in a box. When you're outside of a box, you know, they don't necessarily have enough hands to hold on to you. And so I think there's a lot of liberation in the subculture.
Right. And you're touching upon some of the issues of, like, is it ethical to vandalize public spaces with artwork and that kind of thing? Right. And you've worked with a lot of the other famous artists or had run-ins with them, people like Shepard Fairey, people like Banksy. I saw the documentary on Ron English, and he's gotten himself into a lot of trouble. But is it ethical or is it even effective to kind of hijack corporate ads for things like McDonald's and kind of resubmit the signal in a way that's critical and maybe wakes people up to the issues of how they're being controlled?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, we live in a society that's run by advertising and marketing pretty much, and the media, which they're all in bed together. But it's like an image is so powerful. An image is 1,000 words and, you know, all these metaphors. And so we're inundated with billboards and advertisements and store names and this and that, and everything's got a name and a logo to it and a design element. And this is eye candy to us, and it's attractive, and it mesmerizes us, and it gets us caught up in spending money on things we don't even need or want, just so we can feel the gratification and the connectivity to society. So, you know, I mean, yeah, you know, graffiti is the antithesis to that. You know, it takes that concept and flips it into, you know, this liberating, perpetuating, generating type of energy where, like I said before, I think we're seeking a way out, and whatever leverage device we can come across that'll get us out of that norm is becoming, I'm really grateful to say this, is becoming actually popular now. For many years of my art career, especially after September 11th, I was, on covers of multiple magazines at once, and TV shows, and art books, and art shows, and whatever else that we desire to get ourselves into. And a lot of that stuff ended for me right after September 11th because my art was unwilling to play the game. I was continuing to criticize, critique, and look into and underneath places that I wasn't invited into artistically. And so I think I got myself into new forms of trouble. They weren't with the law for breaking the law and doing graffiti any longer, but now they're new forms of trouble with just the upper levels that just want to silence that type of work. They didn't really want that type of work being exposed. And I went through some years of hardship to defend my right to do this work, to speak my freedom, in a sense,
Mm-hmm. So we've been looking at your complacency mural with the all-seeing eye, and I guess what are chemtrails as well. Can you talk about some of your other, what do you think are your most powerful murals or images you put online, and what are some of your most well-known images?
Yeah, well, God, I've got so much stuff, but I think that some of my more well-known murals point the finger to the blatant, obvious wrongdoings that go on around here, like chemtrails. I've enjoyed putting kind of a modern-day spin to a Renaissance-level type of painting, where it's not this beautiful clouds and this damsel and this man's arms and this romantic vision. It's a kid with a slingshot using his imagination to shoot a jet out of the sky because it's leaving, toxic white stripes everywhere that's falling down in a powder form, destroying, reality. I've always loved the Renaissance paintings, these beautiful, beautiful, lavish art. Mm-hmm. And I've always felt that, for instance, I feel that art is like an entity. It's a living energy that is like a transistor radio. You can tune into it and embody that power of that art and let it flow through you and be a creative individual. And so I think that art itself has gone through some interesting twists and turns. Previously art was patrons and
yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. Let me just interrupt you, because all those commissioned art from the Renaissance, in a way that allowed them to control what kind of messages come out. And street art, by contrast, has been largely independent, decentralized, and kind of unstoppable. But aren't there forces kind of influencing those messages as well? Yeah, totally. I've been working on this kind of idea recently, which, I've been telling people this, that so through the Renaissance, art finally began to find a little bit of the individual in there. And through the early industrial era, we saw some amazing paintings being created by people that wanted to paint the worker suddenly, or wanted to paint the landscape, or wanted to paint their interpretation of God, which was unheard of previously, or paint a spiritual experience or a political idea like Goya, with his 5th of May, which is talking about the Spanish Revolution. But these paintings were very liberating to people because they were breaking away from the norm of control of thought, basically, similar to people who were writing books, who were being condemned to their death for having literature that spoke out against the church or against the monarchies. And so, art became so free that the bourgeois figured out that they want to take it back again. I feel that art became so boring by the 1970s through commercialization and replication and just marketing and advertising, that it had to break away from the aristocrats and become graffiti. It had to become illegal. It had to take itself to the streets and give itself back to kids and teenagers and people that were poor that didn't have access to art because it was locked up in the museums. And what we see now is the commercialization and the reassociation of
the advertising, marketing cartels, you know, kind of feasting on graffiti art now. I got to say, you know, street art and graffiti art is very popular globally, and the majority of it no longer speaks to the poor or the alternative or masses of people in the sense of liberating them from the Illuminati or, you know, the control systems that go on around here and stuff. It's just interesting. It's just an analogy that I've been coming up with lately. And,
well, I think Shepard Fairey's an interesting example of that. He famously did the Obey mural with Andre the Giant, a real tongue-in-cheek kind of anti-establishment message, and hundreds of other famous murals that ended up on streets all across the country and later the world. And then, but in 2008, we saw Shepard Fairey's artwork used for the famous Obama image, which at least I view in many ways as an artificial movement to support someone who really was part of the establishment all along. How do you see that in terms of Shepard Fairey as an example of street art being hijacked?
Well, you know, he's a very wealthy artist. He's made millions of dollars, and I'm sure that he, as a businessman, is more concerned with, you know, generating the money and keeping his business up every month than being a radical or a revolutionary or even a true artist. I think that true artists are not really caught up in the money machine. If you're caught up in the money machine, and we all are, we all have rent to pay, we all have to buy our food, we all got to put a roof over our head and whatnot, but there are exceptions of how far you get in bed with these concepts and ideas. And I mean, I've struggled very hard to keep my message true and critical, and I take a lot of heat for it. And you know, I don't want to throw any badness on anyone out there. I respect what everyone does, but yeah, I'm definitely not trying to do some Obama art. Very critical of Obama. I believed in him. I voted for him. I voted for him for two reasons. One, because he was a black man, and I want to see some change socially go down in our country. But two, he was a stand-up human that stood tall and spoke loud and proud and interesting and intellectual. And I thought, you know, this is a good man. I'm going to put my 2 cents with him. And he's completely let me down. He's done absolutely nothing. I consider him a puppet failure. And, you know, it's really woken me up to the fact that it almost doesn't matter who I vote for. I'm not going to be satisfied because the system has a gun to their head. And, you know, these people aren't going to do anything different than the left man.
Well, that's very true, which is why, I mean, how can people who are awakened on any level, whether they're artists or just people finding information on the internet, whatever it is they're involved in, how can we take that energy and keep it outside of that limited two-party system, outside of the same old establishment that's only serving the same interests we've seen in a concentrated way for the past 100 years, but more broadly throughout the power of all of history?
I think that people need to not fear the idea of change so much. And I'm not talking about change of Obama's type of change. I'm talking about serious political change where it is no longer a two-party system. And I don't even want a three-party system. I think we need to broaden that out way broader. You know, I think that there's a lot of changes that we could apply here. Change is applied on us all the time, but we never ask for real change. You know, we're constantly looking to medium it out and make it normal again. And that type of thinking has gotten really old. You know, I think that we have to demand for more options. And as long as we're stuck in this materialistic, monetary, capitalistic society, we have to start demanding what we want to spend our money on. And we have to, you know, we can make a lot of change just with our money alone. I mean, if corporations want to rule and be considered people too and have voting power, well, then we need to take our money and cause these corporations